What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday, a ton of stuff took place that had to do with those Last of Us Part 2 leaks. Now, again, no spoilers in this video for it, but Sony responded as well as Naughty Dog. We now have release dates for Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima. That's right, because Ghost of Tsushima now has a new release dates. There's a lot of stuff to go over there. And then also Animal Crossing has continued to get review bombs since it came out, and it hasn't gotten any better on Metacritic. It's actually gotten worse. We're going to go over what's happening there. And then Sony, going back to Last of Us Part 2, might be working out a way to try to eliminate spoilers from their own network, like altogether. Interesting stuff here today. As always, guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure to hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're brand new here, hit that red subscribe button down below. And we're going to start with, WWE 2K. What would have been, I guess, 2K21, of course, is not happening, and we know that. But we did hear from 2K that there would be some new game coming, right? Like, we were hearing that something new would be announced, and that was part of kind of the rumors that were out there. And there is something new happening. It's from Saber Interactive, and it's called WWE Battlegrounds. We have a full trailer for it. It's a kind of a quick teaser, but it at least shows us the idea of the game. And 2K Battlegrounds appears to be more of an arcadey, over-the-top style wrestling game. Almost looks kind of like a fighting game even inside the ring, like not like with all the grappling and stuff you'd see with the more, I would say, traditional wrestling games, more simulation wrestling games. This looks kind of out there, similar to what we saw. I believe we had WWE Superstars, and kind of had like Legends, although that was still closer to more simulation. This just looks like it's going to be like just completely over the top. I'm not really a fan of how it looks myself, but I also know we haven't seen actual gameplay for it or even played it ourselves yet or gotten any hands-on impressions, anything there. Now, as for the next WWE 2K game, which I guess would then be 2K22, that will still happen, but they're going to have extended time to develop it. So hopefully that means that it will come out better, in the long run here, but we'll see. However, they will get that extra time, so crossing our fingers that Visual Concepts can deliver next year with WWE. Oh, and Persona 5 Scramble. We know that came out in Japan. Sales were good. People seem to really enjoy it. You could have got it on your Switch because, of course, it's region free, but a lot of people are waiting for it to be localized and moved west and all that stuff. We're still kind of waiting on that, but it does look like it's happening soonish. It's still planned, apparently, and we had a fiscal report from Koei Tecmo, and during this, it was translated on Twitter. You can see this here. It says that Neo 2 DLC and Persona 5's localization are still being planned. So it's not shocking to hear P5S would be coming to the West. Persona does pretty well now in the West compared to probably how it used to do way back when. It's slowly gotten better and better to when Persona 5 came out, and that was the big blowout moment for that series, selling a ton of copies, millions and millions. So Persona 5S, yeah, releasing in the West, not surprising. But when, that's kind of the question. If it's still being planned, we might not see it this year. It might be a next year thing, especially with kind of all the shakeups and everything going on right now in the world with the virus and all that. It might end up being a 2021 thing. Also, a bit of a heads up here for Cyberpunk fans. I don't think this is going to turn into anything crazy like Last of Us Part 2, but some gameplay did leak out online on YouTube. There were 3 different gameplay videos. I'm not going to show them or link them or anything here, but they are out there. It popped up yesterday on like what appeared to be a newer YouTube channel that just uploaded these 3 videos. And it appears to be off-screen footage of what I guess is kind of what they showed the press. So most likely it's an older build, but it showed quite a bit of gameplay, and I don't think you're going to see spoilers anything like Last of Us Part 2, because this does not appear to be someone who has like a development build of the game like Last of Us, but still, it was very odd to just see it pop up. Someone clearly filmed it from like the hip kind of with like their camera trying to hide it, but it looked like pretty straightforward gameplay that wouldn't shock you from what we've seen with their extended gameplay that CD Projekt Red has shown us themselves. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima. We have release dates now. We have 2 new release dates. Ghost of Tsushima was supposed to come out in June. it is no longer happening. And this is an interesting situation. Let's get to the release dates first, and then we'll kind of circle back and talk about what most likely has happened here. Now, this was posted on PlayStation blog, where they shared that we will have Last of Us Part 2 arriving June 19th, and then Ghost of Tsushima will follow on July 17th. So it's going to be a pretty good summer, right? We're going to get Last of Us Part 2 and then Ghost of Tsushima. Not a bad 2-month period there for those two big games, but what's odd about this is that means that Last of Us Part 2 went from the end of May, remember it was going to come out the 29th, so like a month from now, it was going to come out, went to an indefinite delay where we had no release date, which made all of us believe, oh wow, this isn't going to be coming out for a while now, and all of a sudden it's coming out 3 weeks later. It's a 3-week delay to June. Like, that seems strange, doesn't it? But then, of course, this announcement literally came hours after all of those leaks started hitting and people really started circulating them and talking about them online. It was less than 24 hours later, bam, we get this release date. So the big question and point of discussion has become, did these leaks pressure Sony and Naughty Dog into having this game release earlier than they would like? Because there was word that they could have made that end of May deadline. They may have had to crunch a bit more. I mean, it already sounds like they were crunching quite a bit, but spend a little extra time to get it there. It sounds like they could have, and a lot of it had to do with the distribution through retail chains. I mean, they could have obviously just dropped it digitally and been done with it, but they wanted to make sure it was on store shelves as well. It seemed like Ghost of Tsushima was rolling along without too much issue, so it's almost like that got bumped a month, give them a little extra time even to clean it up a bit more if they would like, and have then we have Last of Us Part 2 kind of drop into that slot for that month, and that would allow them to have, I guess, just the distribution and all the chains and everything set up. I do kind of think, all right, I think this leak did have something to do with it. I do. And it's not the leak that you're thinking of that just happened, because it would take a little more time to plan out this release date than like a weekend. Like, it would have taken probably a week or two to make sure all of that lines up with their different studios, right? Couple conference calls, kind of check everything out on their schedule. I think that kind of the plan started to go into motion and the gears started moving around the time of that first initial leak that took place weeks ago. I think it was like at the beginning of April, the beginning of this month. There was that leak that was like 8 or 9 minutes of footage from what appeared to be a straight up dev build of the game. Remember, it was it was like from the beginning of the game. It didn't seem like it was anything spoilers. No, people said, "Oh wow, someone I guess has the game," and they're showing it off, and it showed I'll just say a character running around, and we'll say picking up a guitar. How about that? Okay, so it wasn't anything out there, but it certainly felt like, now looking back on it, maybe a warning shot to let Sony and Naughty Dog know that somebody had the build and they could show a bit more. Because keep in mind, a game like Last of Us Part 2 hinges on the narrative. If it's spoiled, it could absolutely ruin its sales. It could keep it from selling as well as it could have, especially if people already know what's going to happen in the game. And unfortunately, everything we've seen, for the most part, if you looked up the spoilers, appear to be correct, because Naughty Dog did put out a statement. "We know the last few days have been incredibly difficult for you. We feel the same. It's disappointing to see the release and sharing of pre-release footage from development. Do your best to avoid spoilers, and we ask that you don't spoil it for others. The Last of Us Part 2 will be in your hands soon. No matter what you see and hear, the final experience will be worth it." I think that's one of the biggest parts, is like, sure, you could see like a 5-minute like clip of something happening, or you could just read it and say, well, I don't like that, you know, but yeah, it could be a lot different over the span of 10, 12, even 15 hours of gameplay and watching the slow build up to big events or any of that. That could be much more interesting than just reading it. And I mean, sometimes you get these kind of clips out of context or other things happen and you never know, right? So, I still feel like Last of Us Part 2 will sell well to people. And what's really interesting is that under that message on Twitter, they were hiding replies that I can only imagine were like spoilers and other things people were just posting, because yeah, it's to the point where some people just aren't happy with what they've read about the plot, so they're just kind of throwing it all over the place. I'm still going to check out Last of Us Part 2, absolutely, because, I mean, I've waited this long for the game, so I'm going to pick it up and go through it. But one part did disappoint me, and that's that Ghost of Tsushima got bumped a month, because believe it or not, I'm actually looking forward to that game more than Last of Us Part 2, which might sound weird, but I said I was a big Way of the Samurai fan, and I'm kind of getting those vibes here and a little bit of Tenchu, so it's a shame. But hey, maybe the game turns out a little more polished, maybe the day one patch is a little smaller, but yes, at this point, Sony has responded, Naughty Dog responded, and we're going to be getting Last of Us Part 2 in June, Ghost of Tsushima in July, and most likely, I do think leaks from rumors have said an ex-developer who was not happy with their pay or working conditions may have affected all of this and probably ruined a big release for all the hundreds of developers around them that were in the trenches. So it didn't work out well for anyone here. But by the way, the rumors about an ex-employee leaking this stuff out is still a rumor. It hasn't really been confirmed or verified that I've seen by anyone. And I'm sure there's a story to tell here about how all this went down, so I think it will eventually come out and we'll have corroborated sources and all of that, but for now, take that part with a grain of salt. Next up, let's talk about Animal Crossing, because on Metacritic, it's been getting review bombed for like the past month. Now, originally it happened and I said, okay, this will probably kind of fizzle out and go away. It had much more positive user reviews than it had negative reviews. I said, okay, eventually the positive reviews will like overtake it by a mass amount and people will just forget about it and kind of give up. That didn't happen. It seems now the negative reviews have overtaken the positive reviews to the point where it currently has a user score of 5.2, which is pretty low if you consider it's next to the 91 that critics have given Animal Crossing. And this goes back to a point where people are using these user scores to essentially critique and complain about the game and the things that they don't like, which kind of comes back to why people don't really take user reviews that seriously anymore, because it either turns into people who are fanboying about the game not being on their platform, or just being unhappy that people are happy about the game. It sounds weird, right? Yeah. Or just people trying to send messages to the developers, to the company who published the game or whoever, about what they don't like in the game, so they just crush it with these user scores when they might not even have the game. So you might be asking, what are people complaining about in these user reviews? Well, for the most part, the two things I could gather was the save backups, which that's a legitimate complaint. Okay, I get that. And then the other one is the one island per switch that has been locked, right? So you have one island on each switch and all the user profiles will essentially participate in that island. But apparently the one person who's like the main account there on that island will kind of lock everyone else behind them in terms of progression. So that hasn't been going over well either. And Nintendo Life actually clipped a few of these and I tried going through them, but it is a sea of just madness. Okay, I'll say that in these reviews, but Nintendo Life did clip a few of these. You can see them here. We have one that says the game is probably fine, but you can't fully experience it if you are the second player on the same console. This has to be the worst game design decision ever made. Shame on you, Nintendo. And like I said, it's a lot of those, but then you also have ones where it's just like off the rails. Nintendo games are really going downhill, and the problem is the fact that people are buying their games due to nostalgia before their parents were divorced. Okay, that sounds like a level-headed comment there, but I would actually argue that the Nintendo games have been going the opposite. I think they've been getting better as we've gone on here, especially with Nintendo working alongside like the Switch and its limitations. We've seen some amazing looking games, amazing playing games too. So I don't think it's nostalgia that's really keeping people on board here. I think it's the quality of the games, but they do come with their quirks. They do. So I get why people are complaining about this stuff or pointing it out or critiquing it. It's just, I've never understood the review bombing thing. I don't even think we're going to get a number for Animal Crossing, okay, that is going to be mind-blowing when it comes to sales. And do you think Nintendo is like, they're crying into their $100 bills? If the game was selling poorly and it was getting review bombed, then I'd be like, well, maybe they'll look at it. I don't think they will here. So this is an instance of the Pokemon review bombing. That didn't really change anything. We just found out that they sold like 16 million copies. Also, if it turns out like some of the other review bombing, like the Astral Chain one, Metacritic will most likely just kind of remove a lot of the negative ones that are obvious that they have not played them, because there are some like 0 out of 10s and it's like, do you think Animal Crossing's a 0 out of 10? No, it's not. And our last bit of news, let's talk about a patent from Sony that will probably come in handy going forward. Now, I said Sony likes their narrative-driven games, right? People will compare them to movies. I don't really see it that way because there's still gameplay involved, but I do see why people look at that and say it's a lot of narrative stuff, and I'm not into that. I get it. That's fine. But it's clear that Sony wants to protect these games when it comes to the spoilers that could come out, because if you find out how the whole thing ends or big moments in it, you might just not want to buy it because there's no multiplayer or anything else really attached to it, right? So what do? Well, apparently they are looking into ways to pick out spoilers in a game you may be playing and kind of block it out for people if they are online on their PlayStation 5, for example, that's coming up, and they're browsing around the maybe the shop, and let's say something pops up where they have like the Twitch feed in there, or a way to, of course, stream through the PS5 with the create button, and maybe you're very far in the game, they would block it out with spoilers. And this is what the patent mentions. I mean, if you look on Respawn first, it says Sony spoiler blocking program will identify in-game objects such as weapons, characters, story points, and so forth that have been seen by each player. Based on collected data, the program will prevent that player from engaging with content like user-generated content, trophies, lore objects, etc., that they would prefer to discover in the game as a matter of course. I mean, that's pretty clever, I will say that. And you can also have the developers mark spoilers if you would like. This is a patent, of course, but based on them using something like the create button on the PS5, which shows an obvious interest in having users create content with a create button, it wouldn't shock me if this was something that they were going to implement on the PS5. But hopefully it won't be too much longer, and we can find out all these really cool features that developers keep alluding to for this new system from Sony. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from John saying, with the leak and employees leaving, Naughty Dog needs to reevaluate how they are developing games because clearly there's a problem. Also, with spoilers being out there for possibly several months, it'll be interesting to see how that will impact sales. Yeah, the spoilers part, I will admit, people weren't happy with some of the stuff that has been spoiled at this point. Not necessarily that it's been spoiled, but the direction that they're going with the game itself and the plot. I do wonder if people are just gonna check out now. They're like, oh, well, that's not what I thought it was gonna be. I'm not gonna buy it now because I don't really want to experience that story they're telling. Yeah, I do. I think that's one of the reasons it's coming out like as soon as they can in June. I really do. But Naughty Dog does need to get some things figured out. Based on a lot of the reports we've seen, even ex-employees from there who witnessed the stuff and told us about it on Twitter, it doesn't seem great. And the fact that they've lost so many employees to other studios, like talked about the initiative, getting Naughty Dog employees to kind of come over, that's tough. I mean, you want the studio to retain its talent, and hopefully they can figure that out going forward after Last of Us Part 2 wraps up pretty soon here. I'm sure they're going to be crunching now to make sure it's all done. But hopefully after that, they can reevaluate everything they have going on internally and make sure that the employees can last there longer with better schedules, we'll say, because I do think that crunch comes down to the management, so hopefully they can figure all of that out. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. It really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it's The Last of Us Part 2's new release date. Do you think it is a big knee-jerk reaction from Sony and Naughty Dog with the leaks? Because that's a big deal if a narrative-driven game like that is leaked as much as it has been. I mean, you can only stop it so much online. It will be re-uploaded, spread, and really pushed all over the place. You feel like you gotta get that out as soon as possible and move Ghost back because it has not been spoiled. Let me know if all of that has to do with the leaks. Also, what do you think about Animal Crossing getting review bombed? Is that the best way to tell the developers what's happening here, or should you figure out some other way, whether it's expressing your concern on Twitter or through email or suggestions, surveys, any of that? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.